So you're completely drowning in tasks, running on absolute fumes, right? And then someone actually offers you a hand. But what's your immediate response? Nope, I'm good, I got it. Even when you desperately need a break, the words just won't come out. Well, let's dive into this explainer and explore a super fascinating and honestly deeply personal psychological phenomenon. We're going to look at why you, or maybe someone you love, might actually prefer to totally exhaust yourself in silence rather than just simply asking someone for a little bit of help. Society definitely has a lot to say about folks who carry the weight of the entire world on their shoulders, but the psychological reality, it's incredibly different from what you might actually expect. I mean, really ask yourself this. Have you ever stared at a problem for hours, feeling completely overwhelmed, but the mere thought of reaching out and just asking a quick question to make your life easier felt entirely impossible? Like you would literally rather struggle alone in pure silence? Listen, if that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. It's this wild psychological dilemma where your brain is secretly terrified of receiving care. And to figure out exactly why that's happening, we kind of have to look past the surface. Which brings us to section 1, the illusion of independence. Society absolutely loves to praise this kind of behavior. You're probably used to being called strong, self-sufficient, and incredibly capable. People really admire you for never needing anyone, for being that solid rock that everybody else can lean on. But behind all that praise, psychology reveals a much darker reality. See, this isn't just fierce independence. It's often a really profound trauma response. Your brain has deeply, deeply associated asking for help with being vulnerable, which turns self-reliance into a shield against ever being a burden. It's a hidden survival mechanism, even though it totally looks like a superpower to the rest of the world. Moving on to section 2, roots of hyperindependence. So psychology actually shows us that this behavior is what we call an adaptive response. Think about growing up in an environment where support was, let's say, inconsistent, or maybe your emotional world just simply went unnoticed by the adults around you. Well, your brain quickly learned a pretty harsh lesson. Do not expect a rescue. To survive that, it built a psychological fortress to protect you from the constant, repeated sting of disappointment. So what looks like fierce independence today is actually just a highly effective shield your nervous system built a really long time ago, just to keep you safe. And that actually brings us to a pretty profound realization. It's not that you hate the idea of getting help, it's that you simply don't trust it to stay. You stopped expecting reassurance a really long time ago. I mean, why risk the vulnerability of reaching out and exposing your needs only to be let down all over again, right? Your nervous system essentially decided, hey, it is far safer to just rely on myself. It's way easier to solve your problems completely alone rather than risking that old familiar disappointment. It's a calculation your brain literally makes in milliseconds. All right, let's look at section 3, the easy child trap. Ironically enough, getting praised probably reinforced this isolation for you. If you were the easy child growing up, you were likely rewarded for causing no drama and just figuring things out silently. But here's the catch. That praise created a really dangerous set of subconscious rules. You learned that your core value to others was tied entirely to being low maintenance, so you actively try to avoid being a burden at absolutely all costs. You internalized your struggles, which totally cemented the belief that needing others is a fundamental weakness. And that makes it incredibly hard to trust anyone with your problems today, because asking for support, it basically feels like breaking the very rules that earned you love in the first place. And that leads us to section 4, the guilt of receiving. So what happens when someone actually steps in and offers to help you? Well, your nervous system kind of misfires. Instead of feeling relief, your brain subconsciously assumes that you are actively burdening this person. Almost instantly, your body triggers a full-on anxiety response instead of just experiencing comfort. Because you are so incredibly used to being the sole provider of support, actually receiving care feels foreign, physically uncomfortable, and, ironically, completely unsafe to a brain that literally only trusts itself. It just feels like you're doing something terribly wrong. And this anxiety totally dictates your daily life. You end up minimizing your pain just to avoid being a burden. And you avoid expressing your needs because you honestly lack the practice of depending safely on people. And the guilt? Oh man, it's so deep that you probably find yourself apologizing constantly, maybe even to inanimate objects when you accidentally bump into them. But attachment research shows this isn't just you being polite. It is a deep subconscious guilt simply for existing and having normal human needs. Now for section 5, redefining true strength.
Look, on the outside, your facade is absolutely flawless. You appear incredibly strong, composed, capable. Everyone around you just assumes you have it all figured out because you literally never, ever ask for a favor. But the internal reality, it's exhausting. Behind closed doors, this hyper-independence is incredibly lonely. You're out here carrying the weight of the entire world, all because you never learned how to safely depend on people. That extreme self-reliance of yours wasn't built for success. It was built purely for survival.
You learned responsibility long before you learned safety. Just let that sink in for a second. If you're the kind of person who carries the weight of the world on your shoulders, you really need to know that you are not broken. Your strength is completely genuine. Your amazing mind simply adapted to pressure early on, doing exactly what it had to do to keep you safe when support just wasn't there. You stepped up because you had to.
And that ultimately brings us to the true meaning of healing. Healing definitely does not mean you're suddenly becoming weak or losing your edge. Not at all. Healing actually means teaching your powerful nervous system that it is finally allowed to rest. It means showing yourself that you're in a different, much safer environment now, and it's actually okay to let someone else carry the load for a little while. You don't have to be the rock every single second of the day. Because truly understanding your mind is the very first step to finding some actual peace within it. We really shouldn't view your survival skills as flaws. They're these absolutely incredible adaptations that protected you when you needed them the most. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought to carry with you today. Now that you know your extreme independence was really just a shield, what are you going to do with this new understanding? Will you actually let yourself ask for a little bit of help today?